The ship shook violently. Warning lights flashed red across every screen. Tyke grabbed the edge of his console as another explosion rocked the diplomatic vessel. "Engine 3 is gone," shouted the pilot. "We're losing altitude fast." Tyke's forefingered. Hands moved quickly over the emergency systems. As the lead scientist on this mission, he knew this ship better than anyone. But nothing was responding. "It was not an accident," Tyke said, his large eyes blinking rapidly. "Someone sabotaged the ship." Across the bridge, a human stood calmly, checking the straps on his combat vest. Hyun was the only human on board, hired as security for this diplomatic mission. While the alien crew panicked, he seemed almost relaxed. "Everyone, get to the escape pods," Hyun ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Now!" Tyke watched as the human took control of the situation. His species, the Lumerians, considered humans to be primitive. Yes, they had achieved faster than light. Travel surprisingly quickly, but biologically they were simple creatures, or so Tyke had always believed. "Scientist Tyke, we need to go," Hyun said, grabbing the alien's thin arm. "This ship is going down." The planet below them was Nexus 7, classified as a Class X death world by the Galactic Federation. No one went to Nexus 7 willingly. The atmosphere was toxic, the gravity was crushing, the animals were deadly. The weather could kill in minutes. As they ran toward the escape pods, another explosion tore through the ship. Tyke was thrown against a wall. Pain shot through his body. When he opened his eyes, Hyun was pulling him up. "The escape pods are destroyed," Hyun said. "We need to get to the emergency crash seats. This ship is going down hard." Tyke could barely walk. His fragile Lumerian body wasn't built for trauma. Hyun picked him up like he weighed nothing and carried him to the crash section of the ship. "What about the others?" Tyke asked. Hyun's face showed no emotion. "No time." They reached the crash section just as the ship entered the atmosphere. Hyun secured Tyke in a crash seat and then strapped himself in. "This will be rough," the human said. Rough was an understatement. The ship screamed as it tore through the atmosphere. Metal ripped away, systems failed. The forward section broke off completely. When they finally hit the ground, everything went. Black Tyke woke to the sound of metal being cut. His body hurt everywhere. The air around him was filled with smoke. He tried to move, but found he couldn't. "Stay still." Hyun's voice came from somewhere nearby. "You have 3 broken bones. I've stabilized them, but you shouldn't move yet." As the smoke cleared, Tyke saw the human working on a panel. Hyun's face was cut in several places. Blood, red so strange, ran down his arm from a deep gash. Yet he worked as if he felt no pain. "The others?" Tyke asked. Hyun paused. "Dead. We're the only survivors." The human continued working, pulling out wires and components from the ship's systems. "I've activated the life support for this section of the ship," Hyun explained. "It should keep the air breathable in here. Outside." He glanced at a readout. "The atmosphere would kill you in minutes." "And you?" Tyke asked. Hyun shrugged. "I can manage for a few hours at a time. It's not pleasant, but I won't die immediately." Tyke was shocked. No species he knew of could survive Nexus 7's atmosphere, even briefly. Perhaps there was more to humans than his people had believed. "The emergency beacon?" Tyke asked. "Damaged in the crash," Hyun said. Key components were in the forward section of the ship, the section that broke off during entry. Tyke's heart sank. Without the beacon, no one would find them. "Then we are going to die here," he said. Hyun looked at him with those strange human eyes, only 2 of them so limiting, and smiled slightly. "Not if I can help it." Over the next day, Hyun treated Tyke's injuries and took stock of their supplies. The human moved with purpose, never wasting energy. Tyke watched, fascinated despite their dire situation. "The ship's AI is partially functional," Hyun reported. "I've named it June." "You named the AI?" Tyke was confused. "Why?" "Humans like to name things," Hyun said simply. "June has mapped the crash site of the forward section. It's about 30 miles northeast of us." 30 miles across the surface of Nexus 7? Tyke's voice rose. "Impossible." Hyun sat down across from the alien and looked him directly in the eyes. It was considered rude among Lemurians, but Tyke had learned that humans used eye contact to establish trust. Listen to me, Tyke. I know your people think humans are primitive, big muscles, small brains, right? But we survived on a planet that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We evolved to endure, to adapt. Hyun pointed at the readouts showing the conditions outside. Your body can't handle the atmosphere, gravity, or temperature out. There. Mine barely can, but barely is enough. I can get us to that beacon. Tyke studied the human. Even if you could reach the forward section, I could not accompany you, and you don't know how to repair the beacon. Hyun smiled. Exactly. I need you for your brain. You need me for my body. Together, we might just survive this. Tyke had never worked closely with a human before. His people saw them as useful tools at best, strong workers or good soldiers, but nothing more. Yet here, trapped on this death world, Hyun was his only hope. How would we even attempt this? Tyke asked. Hyun had already been working on that problem. He showed Tyke a suit he had begun assembling from parts of the ship. A portable life support system, Hyun explained. It won't be comfortable, but it should keep you alive long enough to get to the forward section and back. I'll carry you when the terrain gets too rough. Tyke examined the makeshift suit. It was crude but cleverly designed. Perhaps there was more intelligence behind those human eyes than he had given credit for. And what of the native wildlife? Tyke asked. Nexus 7 is home to some of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. Hyun pulled out a metal bar he had fashioned into a crude spear. I'll handle them. Tyke blinked all four of his eyes, in disbelief. With that, against Nexus 7 predators, you have no energy weapons? Energy weapons were destroyed in the crash, Hyun said. But don't worry. My ancestors hunted with less than this for thousands of years. As night fell on Nexus 7, they heard the first howls of creatures in the distance. The ship's remaining sensors detected movement, large beings circling the crash site, drawn by the unusual object in their territory. Tyke felt fear grip his hearts. They know we're here. Hyun nodded, his face calm as he continued preparing for their journey. They always know. That's why we leave at first light. The beacon is our only shot at getting off this planet alive. Outside, something massive moved past one of the external cameras. Its scales gleamed in the moonlight. Teeth longer than Tyke's arm flashed as it opened its mouth to taste the air. That creature is twice your size, Tyke whispered. Hyun looked at the monster on the screen and nodded. Then I'll have to be twice as smart. He turned to Tyke with a determined expression. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we fight for our lives. Tyke tried to sleep, but his mind was racing. He had never imagined depending so completely on a human. His very survival now rested in Hyun's hands. Perhaps, Tyke thought as he drifted off, there was more to learn about humans than his people had ever bothered to discover. Morning came too quickly on Nexus 7. The strange purple light of the alien sun filtered through the cracks in the damaged ship. Tyke watched as Hyun checked the makeshift protective suit one final time. This will keep you alive, Hyun said. But it's not perfect. The air filters will need cleaning every few hours. The temperature control might fail if we push too hard. Tyke touched the suit with his slender fingers. You built this from crash parts overnight? Hyun nodded. Necessity is a good teacher. And what will protect you? Tyke asked. Hyun pointed to a breathing mask he had made. This filters out the worst toxins. For the rest, he shrugged. I'll deal with it. The ship's AI spoke through a damaged speaker. External temperature is rising. Current readings indicate 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Atmospheric toxicity remains at lethal levels. Thank you, June, Hyun said to the AI. Why do you call it that? Tyke asked. Names matter, Hyun replied simply. They give purpose. As Tyke put on the protective suit, he asked, You were military before becoming a security guard? Hyun's face darkened. Yes. Yet you no longer serve. Why? Hyun checked his makeshift spear and the knife he had fashioned from ship metal. He didn't answer right away. Some orders shouldn't be followed, he finally said. In his mind, Hyun saw flashes of his past, his commanding officer Mina standing before him. "You disobeyed a direct order, Sergeant Hyun," she had said. "The civilians were innocent," Hyun had replied. "The intelligence was wrong. That wasn't your call to make." He remembered the families he had refused to fire upon, the court-martial that followed, the dishonorable discharge that ended his military career. "Some think you're a coward," Mina had told him afterward. "I think you're too human for your own good." "We need to leave," Hyun said, pushing away the memories. "Those predators from last night will return and they'll bring friends." Tyke finished sealing his suit. The helmet covered his large head, making his four eyes look even bigger behind the clear faceplate. "I am ready," he said, though his voice trembled. Hyun opened the emergency hatch. Hot, toxic air rushed in. Even through his mask, Hyun could taste the poison. His eyes watered, and his skin prickled painfully in the heat. "Stay close," he told Tyke. "Step where I step." They emerged onto the surface of Nexus 7. The landscape was all sharp black rocks and red dust. Strange plants with metallic leaves, cut like razor blades, grew in patches. In the distance, floating creatures that looked like balloons with tentacles drifted on air currents. "Thermal readings suggest increased activity half a mile east," June's voice said through the communicator. Hyun had attached to his wrist. "Predators?" Hyun asked. "Most likely," the AI replied. Tyke moved awkwardly in his suit. The high gravity of Nexus 7 made each step difficult for the alien. His species evolved on a low-gravity world, with delicate bones and muscles. Here, he struggled to walk. "I am slowing us down," Tyke said after they had covered less than a quarter mile. Hyun looked back at the crashed ship, then at the alien. "We'll manage." They continued forward, Hyun helping Tyke over the difficult terrain. The human moved with surprising grace despite the crushing gravity. His breathing was labored behind his mask, but his steps remained steady. After an hour, they reached a ridge overlooking a vast plain. In the distance, strange herd animals with 6 legs grazed on the metallic plants. "We need to cross that," Hyun said, pointing to the plain. "It's exposed, but it's faster than going around." "Those animals," Tyke said, "they can survive eating." "Those plants? Everything on this planet has evolved to use what would kill other species," Hyun replied, "kind of like humans." Tyke studied Hyun. "Your species is remarkably adaptable. My people believe it's because you're simple organisms. Less complexity means fewer vulnerabilities." Hyun laughed. "Is that what they teach you about us?" "Am I wrong?" Tyke asked. "We're not simple," Hyun said. "We're stubborn. There's a difference." They started down toward the plain. Halfway down the slope, Hyun suddenly stopped and raised his hand. "Don't move," he whispered. 20 feet ahead, a creature lay, perfectly camouflaged among the rocks. It looked like a cross between a lizard and a spider, with 8 limbs ending in claws and a body covered in scales that matched the exact color of the stones. "It hunts by sensing electromagnetic fields," Tyke whispered. "Your nervous system is giving us away." "Can it sense you through your suit?" Hyun asked. "The suit blocks most emissions," Tyke replied, "but yours are strong. All humans produce powerful electromagnetic signatures." The creature turned its head toward them. It had no eyes, just sensitive pits that could detect the smallest electrical impulse from a prey's beating heart. "Stay still," Hyun said. He slowly raised his spear. The creature rose on its back legs, nearly as tall as Hyun himself. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. "Hyun, you cannot fight that with a stick," Tyke said urgently. "Watch me," the creature charged. Hyun stood his ground. At the last possible moment, he dropped to one knee and thrust the spear upward. The metal point drove into the soft underside of the creature's jaw. But the beast wasn't done. It thrashed wildly, one claw catching Hyun across the chest. The human rolled away, losing his grip on the spear. Blood soaked through his torn shirt. The wounded predator turned to attack again. Hyun pulled out his knife. As the creature lunged, Hyun dove underneath it and plunged the knife into its belly, slicing upward. The beast collapsed, its internal fluids spilling onto the rocks. Tyke stared in shock. "You killed it with primitive weapons." Hyun winced as he examined his own wound. "Told you I would." He retrieved his spear and cleaned his knife on a nearby plant. "We should keep moving. Blood attracts more predators." "Your injury requires treatment," Tyke said. "Later," Hyun replied. "We need distance first." They continued across the plain, moving faster now that they were on level ground. But Tyke noticed that Hyun's breathing was becoming more labored and his steps less steady. "The toxins are affecting you," Tyke said. "I'm fine," Hyun insisted. "No, you're not. Your species may be adaptable, but you are not invincible." Dark clouds began gathering overhead. The wind picked up, carrying particles that pinged against Tyke's suit. "Storm coming?" Hyun said. "We need shelter." They changed direction, heading toward a cluster of rock formations. By the time they reached the rocks, the storm had hit. Acid rain poured down, sizzling when it hit exposed metal on Tyke's suit. Hyun guided them into a shallow cave. "We'll wait it out here." Inside, Hyun finally examined his wound. The gash across his chest was deep, but had mostly stopped bleeding. "May I?" Tyke asked, pointing to the injury. Hyun nodded. Tyke carefully cleaned the wound using supplies from a small medkit Hyun carried. "You fight with remarkable skill for what did you call yourself?" "A security guard?" Tyke said. "I was a soldier first," Hyun replied. "Special forces." "And now you protect diplomats and scientists," Tyke said. "A waste of your talents." Hyun looked at the alien. "What talents do you think I have exactly?" "Killing, obviously," Tyke said. "Is that all you think humans are good for?" The question hung in the air between them. Outside, the storm raged, acid rain dissolving anything it touched. "Your people," Hyun said after a while. "You think you're superior because of your technology, your advanced minds. But out here?" He gestured to the deadly world beyond the cave. "Intelligence alone won't save you." "And brute strength will?" Tyke challenged. "Neither will save us alone," Hyun said. "But together, we might have a chance." Tyke considered this. Perhaps his view of humans had been too simple. This one, at least, was more complex than he had believed. "The storm will last for hours," Tyke said, checking the readings on his suit. "We should rest while we can." Hyun nodded and leaned back against the cave wall. "When we reach the forward section, do you think you can repair the beacon?" "If the main components are intact, yes," Tyke said. "But that's a big if." "One problem at a time," Hyun said, closing his eyes. "First, we survive the journey." Tyke watched as the human drifted into sleep, his body already fighting to heal itself. Outside, a world designed to kill them waited. And somewhere out there, the piece of ship that might save their lives. Tyke had never felt so dependent on another being before. It was uncomfortable. But perhaps, he thought, there was something to learn from this human after all. The acid storm ended before dawn. Hyun woke to the sound of something scratching outside their cave. He put a finger to his lips, signaling Tyke to stay quiet. They waited, not moving, barely breathing. After several minutes, the scratching moved away. "What was that?" Tyke whispered. "Don't know," Hyun said. "Don't want to find out." He checked Tyke's protective suit, fixing a small tear that had formed near the joint. "How's your air supply?" "Filters are at 60%, Tyke replied. "They will need replacement soon." Hyun nodded. "We should reach the forward section today if we keep a good pace." They left the cave cautiously. The acid rain had changed the landscape. Where there had been red dust, now there were small pools of bubbling liquid. Steam rose from them, toxic and deadly. "Step only where I step," Hyun reminded Tyke. They traveled for 3 hours across the changed terrain. Tyke noticed that Hyun was watching the sky often. "What are you looking for?" the alien asked. "Flying predators," Hyun said. "This planet has them. I can feel it." "Your human instincts?" Tyke asked, not hiding his doubt. Pattern recognition, Hyun corrected. Every ecosystem has a balance. We've seen ground hunters and plant eaters. There must be air hunters too. As if summoned by his words, a shadow passed over them. They looked up to see a massive creature soaring on the thermal currents. It had a wingspan wider than their crashed ship, with a long neck ending in a beaked head. Don't run, Hyun said. It hunts by movement. They stood perfectly still until the flying predator moved on. Your knowledge of animal behavior is impressive, for a primitive species, Tyke said. Hyun smiled behind his mask. Humans had to understand predators before we had weapons. It was understand or die. By midday, they reached the edge of a massive ravine. It cut across the landscape like a wound, so deep they couldn't see the bottom. June, Hyun called into his communicator. Update on the forward section location. The AI's voice crackled through. Sensors indicated as approximately 2 miles ahead, and 1 mile down. Hyun and Tyke peered over the edge of the ravine. The ship section fell in there? Tyke asked. Looks that way, Hyun replied. Tyke scanned the ravine with a device built into his suit. There's a way down about half a mile to our right, a less steep section. As they walked along the edge, Tyke's suit began to beep. My filters are failing, he said, his voice tight with worry. I have perhaps 1 hour of clean air left. We need to move faster, Hyun said. They found the path down into the ravine. It was steep but manageable. As they descended, the temperature dropped. The walls of the ravine were covered in strange glowing moss that gave off a pale blue light. This is not natural, Tyke said, examining the moss. It has been engineered. By what? Hyun asked. By whoever made this planet a death world, Tyke replied. Halfway down, they found the first sign that the ravine had once been home to intelligent life. A structure was carved into the rock wall. It looked like a doorway, but filled in with newer rock. This planet wasn't always like this, Tyke said, running his hand over the carved symbols around the sealed door. These are similar to ancient Craxian writing. They were one of the first spacefaring races. What happened to them? Hyun asked. They disappeared. Most believe they were wiped out in the Third Galactic War. And you think they lived here? Anu? This hellhole? Tyke shook his head. No. I think this was their weapon. A whole planet as a weapon? Hyun asked, disbelief in his voice. The ancient wars were fought with terrifying technologies, Tyke explained. Entire worlds were changed, stars manipulated. This planet shows signs of massive terraforming. They continued downward. The path grew steeper. In places, they had to climb down near vertical sections of rock. Tell me about your squadmate, Tyke said as they rested on a narrow ledge. The one you mentioned in your sleep. Hyun was quiet for a moment. Dai. His name was Dai. What happened to him? He died, saving others, Hyun said, his voice flat. A building collapsed during a mission. He held up a beam so 20 civilians could escape. By the time they got out, it was too late for him. He sacrificed himself, Tyke said. Why would he do that? Because that's what humans do, Hyun replied. We don't leave people behind, not if we can help it. Even strangers? Even aliens? Tyke pressed. Anyone who needs help, Hyun said. Not always. We're not perfect, but the best of us try. They started moving again. As they descended deeper, strange sounds echoed through the ravine. Calls and responses getting closer. We're being hunted, Hyun said. By what? Tyke asked, his voice shaking. Pack hunters, Hyun replied. They're tracking us. Through gaps. In the rocks, they caught glimpses of sleek, fast-moving creatures running along ledges parallel to their path. They had 6 legs and bodies built for speed, with long heads full of teeth. Stalkers, Tyke whispered. The ship's database mentioned them. They hunt in coordinated packs. How many do you think? Hyun asked. At least 10, based on the sounds. Hyun tightened his grip on his spear. We need to get to the ship section before they decide to attack. They increased their pace, almost running now. Tyke's suit beeped more urgently. Filter failure imminent, he gasped. Suddenly his suit made a hissing sound. One of the seals had broken. Toxic air leaked in. Tyke stumbled and fell to his knees. I can't breathe. Hyun quickly examined the suit. The main seal is damaged. I can't fix it here. Without hesitation, Hyun lifted the alien and carried him over his shoulder. Despite the crushing gravity, the human moved quickly down the path. Put me down, Tyke wheezed. You can't carry me and fight. Watch me, Hyun grunted. The stalkers sensed Tyke's weakness. Their calls became more excited. They moved closer, no longer hiding. Tyke's vision began to blur as the toxins entered his lungs. He saw Hyun place him down behind a rock, then turn to face 3 stalkers that had cut off their path. Through failing consciousness, Tyke watched as Hyun fought. The human moved with surprising speed, using his spear to keep the creatures at bay. When one lunged, he sidestepped and drove his spear through its eye. Another leapt at him from above. Hyun rolled and came up with his knife, slashing across the creature's throat. The 3rd stalker circled cautiously. Hyun stood his ground, bleeding from new wounds but still fighting. Tyke felt himself fading. His last thought before blackness took him was that he had been wrong about humans. They weren't just simple brutes. They were something else entirely. Tyke woke to the sound of Hyun's voice. Stay with me, Tyke. We're almost there. The alien opened his eyes. He was still being carried. His suit had been patched with a piece of stalker hide, the seal temporarily fixed. You saved me, Tyke said weakly. That's the plan, Hyun replied, his breathing labored. Keep saving each other until we get off this rock. They had reached the bottom of the ravine. Ahead of them, half buried in rock and dirt, was the forward section of their ship, but there was a problem. A big problem. The ship section had landed in a pool of caustic liquid. Steam rose from its surface, hinting at its deadly nature. The only way to reach the ship was to wade through the pool. We can't cross that, Tyke said. It will eat through my suit in seconds. And my skin, Hyun added grimly. They found a spot, behind a large boulder, and rested. Tyke's breathing was still ragged but improving as his body fought off the toxins. The stalkers will find us again, Hyun said. We don't have much time. Tyke looked at the human. Despite everything, despite the wounds and the exhaustion, Hyun's eyes still held determination. Why do you continue fighting when the odds are so poor? Tyke asked. It's what humans do, Hyun said simply. We don't give up. Even when logic says you should? Especially then, Hyun grinned. Besides, I promised to get you home. Tyke had studied many species across the galaxy. None puzzled him like humans. Their stubborn refusal to accept defeat defied rational explanation. I think I'm beginning to understand why the Galactic Federation fears your kind, Tyke said. They fear us? Hyun seemed surprised. They would never admit it, Tyke replied. But yes, your species advances too quickly, adapts too readily, and now I see why. Hyun stood up, looking at the ship section in the caustic pool. We'll talk about galactic politics after we fix that beacon. He began gathering materials from around them, pieces of rock, strips of hide from the dead stalkers, parts from his own gear. What are you doing? Tyke asked. Making a plan, Hyun replied. A human plan. In the distance, the calls of stalkers echoed once more. They were coming back, and they were bringing friends. Tyke watched as Hyun worked, his face set with grim determination. The alien wondered what it must be like to be a species that simply refused to die, no matter what the universe threw at them. Perhaps, Tyke thought, that was humanity's true power. Your plan is suicide, Tyke said as Hyun finished explaining. Hyun shrugged. Got a better one? The human had created a crude protective covering using stalker hides and rocks, bound together with strips of his own clothing. It wouldn't last long in the caustic pool, but might give him enough time to reach the ship section. The liquid will still get through, Tyke argued. My scans show it's highly corrosive. It will burn your skin severely. I know, Hyun said calmly, but I can take it long enough to get to the ship and back. And if you can't? Then you find another way out, Hyun said. Maybe the next search party will have better luck. Taik shook his head. No, I cannot allow you to do this. Hyun looked at the alien with surprise. You can't allow me. It is too dangerous, Taik insisted. We need to find another solution. We don't have time, Hyun said, pointing to movement on the ravine walls. The stalkers are regrouping. And, look there. Farther along the ravine floor, a much larger creature was moving toward them. It looked like the stalkers, but was twice their size, with bony plates covering its body. Queen Stalker, Taik whispered. The pack leader. If she reaches us, we're both dead, Hyun said. I need to get those beacon parts now. Before Taik could argue further, Hyun's communicator crackled to life. Incoming data transmission from ship section, Jun's voice announced. Play it, Hyun ordered. A damaged recording began to play. Most of it was static, but they could make out parts of a message. Sabotage confirmed. Agent named Jin, working for the Kreth Consortium, wanted to prevent human alliance. The Kreth, Taik said, his large eyes widening. They've opposed human membership in the Galactic Federation from the beginning. Politics, Hyun muttered. Always politics. He finished his preparations, covering his body as best he could with the makeshift protection. He handed Taik his knife. If the stalkers come before I get back, use this. Aim for the throat or eyes. Taik took the knife awkwardly. I'm a scientist, not a warrior. Today, you're both, Hyun said. The human moved to the edge of the caustic pool. Steam rose from its surface, carrying a smell like burning metal. Hyun tested the depth with a long stick. It was about waist deep. The beacon components, Taik said quickly. They're in the navigation section, near the front viewing port. They'll be in a black case with yellow stripes. Hyun nodded. Black case. Yellow stripes, got it. Hyun, Taik said. Why are you doing this? Why risk your life for me? For an alien who thought your kind was primitive? Hyun looked back at Taik. Because it's the right thing to do. With that, he stepped into the pool. Immediately, the liquid began eating through his protective covering. Hyun gritted his teeth but kept moving forward. Every step was a battle against the pain. Taik watched anxiously as Hyun made his way to the ship section. The human's protective covering was dissolving quickly. When he reached the ship, parts of his legs were already exposed to the caustic liquid. Hyun climbed onto the wreckage, disappearing inside through a broken viewport. Taik could only wait, counting the seconds in his head. On the ravine walls, the stalkers were moving closer. The queen stood watching from a distance, as if calculating the best moment to attack. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Taik's concern grew. Had Hyun been injured inside? Had the ship shifted in the liquid, trapping him? Finally, Hyun emerged, holding a black case with yellow stripes. He had found the beacon components, but now he had to cross the pool again and his protection was mostly gone. Hyun took a deep breath and jumped into the pool. He moved as fast as possible, splashing through the liquid with desperate speed. His face was twisted in pain. As Hyun neared the edge, the stalkers made their move. 3 of them leapt down from the walls, landing between Taik and the pool's edge. Taik froze, the knife shaking in his hand. The stalkers advanced slowly, knowing their prey was trapped. In the pool, Hyun saw what was happening. Despite his pain, he called out, "Taik, run! Get to higher ground!" But Taik didn't run. Something changed in the alien scientist. Seeing Hyun's sacrifice, something clicked in his mind. Without thinking, he stepped forward, waving his arms and shouting, "Over here! I'm the weaker prey, come for me!" The stalkers turned, following Taik as he backed away from the pool's edge. He was giving Hyun a clear path out of the caustic liquid. Hyun understood immediately. He pushed forward with his last strength, reaching the edge and pulling himself out. His legs and lower body were covered in burns where the liquid had eaten through his clothes and skin. He stumbled to his feet, still clutching the beacon case. "Taik!" he shouted. "To me!" Taik ran toward Hyun, the stalkers close behind. Hyun dropped the case and grabbed his spear, which he had left near the pool. As Taik reached him, Hyun pushed the alien behind him and faced the stalkers. Despite his injuries, he stood tall, spear ready. The first stalker lunged. Hyun met it with his spear, driving the point deep into its chest, but the force knocked him backward. He fell, crying out as his burned skin hit the ground. The second stalker leapt toward them. Without thinking, Tyke picked up the knife Hyun had given him and thrust it forward. By pure luck, the blade found the creature's eye. It howled and retreated, shaking its head in pain. The third stalker circled cautiously. In the distance, the queen watched, as if evaluating these strange prey that fought back so fiercely. Tyke helped Hyun to his feet. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Not far," Hyun admitted, "but I'll try." Tyke looked around desperately. They needed shelter. A defensible position. He spotted a small opening in the ravine wall, partly hidden by rocks. "There," he pointed. "We can make it." Supporting Hyun, Tyke moved toward the opening. The remaining stalker followed, but kept its distance, wary after seeing its packmates injured. They reached the opening and squeezed inside. It was a small cave, barely big enough for both of them. But the entrance was narrow. Only one stalker could come at them at a time. Hyun collapsed against the wall, his breathing ragged. Tyke examined the human's injuries. The caustic liquid had burned through layers of skin on his legs and waist. The wounds were severe. "You need medical treatment," Tyke said. "Beacon first?" Hyun gasped, pointing to the case he had somehow kept hold of during the fight. Tyke opened the case. Inside were the components they needed to repair the emergency beacon. They were undamaged. "You did it," Tyke said. "You actually did it." Hyun managed a weak smile. "Told you I would." Outside the cave, the stalkers gathered. The queen had joined them now, her massive form visible through the narrow entrance. She tested the opening with one clawed limb, but couldn't fit. Her bulk through. For now they were safe, but they were also trapped. "Your legs," Tyke said, examining the burns more closely. "The damage is extensive." "Will I walk again?" Hyun asked. Tyke hesitated. "I don't know. Not without proper medical treatment." Hyun nodded, accepting this. "Then, we need to get that beacon working even more urgently. But how do we get back to the ship?" Tyke asked. "You can't walk that far, and I can't carry you in this gravity." "One problem at a time," Hyun said. "First, let's see what we have." He emptied his pockets, taking inventory of what they had. Some tools, the remains of their food, the communicator still linked to June, and the beacon components. "June," Hyun called into the communicator. "Are you still online?" "Affirmative," the AI responded, "though power is failing in the main ship section. Estimated time remaining, 6 hours. Can you send a signal to the beacon components if we activate them here?" Tyke asked. "Negative," June replied. "The beacon must be connected to the ship's primary power source." Hyun and Tyke looked at each other. They had the parts, but they were still far from safety. "We need to get back to the ship," Hyun said. "Somehow." Outside, the queen stalker roared. The sound echoed through the ravine, calling more of her pack to the hunt. Tyke looked at Hyun's burned legs, then at the gathered predators outside their small refuge. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to face impossible odds, and, for the first time, he felt the strange human determination to overcome them anyway. Night fell on Nexus 7. The darkness in the ravine was nearly complete, broken only by the eerie blue glow of the moss on the walls. Outside their small cave, the stalkers waited. Occasionally, one tested the entrance, only to retreat from Hyun's. Spear Tyke finished applying the last of their medical supplies to Hyun's burned legs. "That's the best I can do," the alien said. Hyun nodded. His face was pale from pain and blood loss. "Thank you." "I am sorry," Tyke said quietly. "This mission, it was not what you were told." "What do you mean?" Tyke hesitated. "I was not just a scientist on a diplomatic mission. I was sent to evaluate humanity." Hyun didn't seem surprised. "Evaluate us for what?" "For full membership in the Galactic Federation," Take explained. Some races believe humans are too dangerous, too unpredictable. Others think you could be valuable allies. I was to observe and report back. And what's your conclusion? Hyun asked. Tyke looked at the injured human. That the galaxy has much to learn from your kind. Hyun smiled weakly. I knew. You knew? Tyke was shocked. How? The way you watched. Me asked questions tested my reactions. Hyun shrugged. I've been evaluated before. Tyke was silent for a moment. And yet you still risked your life to save mine. Your life matters, Hyun said simply. Alien or not. Outside, the Queen Stalker roared again. The sound was closer now. She was growing impatient. We need a plan, Hyun said, trying to sit up. Straighter. The beacon parts won't help us if we can't get back to the ship. Tyke looked at the components in the case. An idea began to form in his mind. Perhaps we don't need to go back to the ship, he said. Perhaps we can bring the ship's power to us. He picked up the communicator. June, can you access the ship's remaining power cells remotely? Affirmative, the AI replied, but I cannot move them. No, but you can overload them, Tyke said. Create a power surge that would be visible from orbit. Such a surge would destroy what remains of the ship, June warned. We don't need the ship anymore, Tyke said. We need rescue. Hyun nodded, understanding the plan. Can you modify the beacon components to send a signal when the power surge happens? Yes, Tyke said, already working on the parts. I can tune them to emit on the emergency frequency. When the power cells overload, the signal will be boosted enough to reach orbit. And if there's no one in orbit to hear it? Hyun asked. Then, we die here, Tyke said simply. But it's our best chance. As Tyke worked on the beacon components, Hyun kept watch at the cave entrance. The stalkers were becoming more aggressive, sensing that their prey was weakening. They're going to rush us soon, Hyun said. Take worked faster, his four-fingered hands moving quickly over the delicate components. Almost ready. A loud crash came from outside. The Queen had slammed her body against the rocks near the cave entrance, causing some to break loose. She's trying to widen the opening, Hyun said grimly. Another crash. More rocks fell. The entrance was getting larger. Done, Tyke announced, holding up the modified beacon. Now we just need to activate it at the same time as the power surge. Hyun handed his spear to Tyke. You'll need this. Me? Tyke was confused. But you're the warrior. And you're the one who has to survive now, Hyun said. I can't fight like this, but I can operate the beacon. Before Tyke could protest, the Queen slammed into the rocks again. This time, the entrance widened enough for her massive head to push through. Go, Hyun shouted. Find higher ground. When you're safe, I'll tell June to overload the power cells and activate the beacon. No, Tyke said firmly. I'm not leaving you. The Queen pulled her head back, preparing for another charge. Don't be stupid, Hyun snapped. One of us has to survive to tell them about the sabotage, about Jin and the Kreth. Then it should be you, Tyke insisted. Humans are the ones being evaluated. Your testimony would matter more. That's not how this works, Hyun said. Just go. The Queen charged again. More rocks fell. The entrance was now wide enough for her to squeeze through. Take looked at the spear in his hands, then at Hyun. Something changed in the alien's eyes. No, he said, his voice stronger now. That's not how humans work, is it? You don't leave people behind. With sudden determination, Tyke began dragging Hyun toward the back of the cave. What are you doing? Hyun demanded. Being more human, Tyke replied. He found a narrow crack in the back wall of the cave, barely visible in the dim light. It was tight, but they might fit. Through here, Tyke said, pushing Hyun toward the crack. The Queen forced her way further, into the cave entrance, her claws scraping against stone as she fought to reach them. Hyun squeezed through the crack, grunting in pain as his injured legs scraped against the rock. Tyke followed, just as the Queen broke through completely. They found themselves in a narrow tunnel that sloped upward. It was almost too tight for Tyke in his protective suit. "You planned this?" Hyun asked as they crawled upward. "I observed it," Tyke corrected. "Like a good scientist. While you were unconscious earlier, I saw small creatures using passages like this." Behind them, the queen roared in frustration. She was too large to follow them through the crack. They crawled for what seemed like hours, the tunnel gradually widening. Hyun's strength was fading, but he kept moving, pushed forward by Tyke's unexpected determination. Finally, they emerged onto a high ledge on the ravine wall. Below them, they could see the pool with the ship section. In the distance, the main crash site was visible as a small light on the plain. "Now," Tyke said, activating the modified beacon. "June, overload the power cells." "Countdown initiated," the AI replied. "Power surge in 3 minutes." Tyke looked down at the ravine floor. The stalkers, including the queen, had gathered below, watching them but unable to climb the steep wall. "To their position. You didn't leave me," Hyun said quietly. "I learned from the best," Tyke replied. In the distance, the light of the crashed ship grew brighter as the power cells began to overload. It was like a small sun rising on the horizon. "Will it work?" Hyun asked. "The signal will reach orbit," Tyke said. "But I don't know if anyone will hear it." The light grew brighter still. The stalkers below retreated from it, sensing danger. "If we survive this," Hyun said, "what will you tell your superiors about humans?" Tyke looked at Hyun. "The truth, that you are the most remarkable species I have ever encountered. Not because of your technology or even your strength, but because of what drives you." The ship in the distance was now a blinding point of light. Suddenly, it exploded in a massive surge of energy. The shockwave rolled across the plain toward them. Tyke held up the beacon, pointing it toward the sky. As the shockwave hit, the beacon glowed brightly, sending its signal into space. Then everything went dark. Tyke woke to the sound of engines. Large engines. He opened his eyes to see a rescue ship hovering above the ravine. Spotlights swept the area. Beside him, Hyun lay unconscious but alive. Take waved frantically at the rescue ship. A beam of light found them. The ship moved closer, a hatch opening in its side. Relief washed over Take as he realized they had been found. 3 weeks later, Tyke stood before the Galactic Federation Council. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from 100 worlds. "And what is your final assessment of the human species?" the High Counselor asked. Tyke looked over at Hyun, who sat in the gallery. The human's legs were healing, though. He still needed support to walk. "Humans are not like us," Tyke began. "They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They learned to survive against impossible odds, to fight when logic said they should surrender, to help others, even at great cost to themselves." He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. Some fear these traits. They see humans as dangerous, unpredictable, and they are not wrong. Murmurs filled the chamber. Tyke raised his hand for silence. "But what I learned on Nexus 7 is that these same traits make humans the allies you want when facing true danger, when death seems certain, when hope is lost." Tyke straightened to his full height. "I recommend not only that humans be granted full membership in the Galactic Federation, but that we learn from them. Not their technology, which is still developing, but their spirit, their unwillingness to abandon those in need, their refusal to accept defeat." He looked directly at Hyun. "Their humanity." Later, as they left the chamber, Hyun approached Tyke. "Thank you," the human said, "for what you said in there." "I only spoke the truth," Tyke replied. "And the Kreth conspiracy?" "Jin's sabotage being investigated," Tyke said. "Justice will be done." Hyun nodded, then smiled. "So I hear they're offering me a job, first human representative to the Federation. With me as your advisor," Tyke added, "if you'll accept me." Hyun extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. "Partners?" Tyke took the human's hand in his own. "Partners." Above them, The great dome of the council chamber showed the stars of the galaxy. Somewhere out there was Earth, home to a species that had climbed from the mud to the stars, a species that refused to die, a species that would risk everything to save even an alien who had once thought them primitive, a species worth knowing. The end.